Blog Talk Radio.
There is a mystery lurking the forested areas of the world. Many have seen something, but what is it? Are they seeing known animals? They claim they walk upright, like a human. There are so many eyewitnesses. Can they all be wrong? Is someone just playing a trick on people? Or is it possible a large bipedal being could exist in the forests of the world? You have a decision to make. Do you believe it exists? These are the topics we discuss on Sasquatch Watch Radio. Welcome everyone to another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Today is October 22nd, 2013, and we've got a great show in store for you tonight. Before we bring on our great guest tonight, first I need to bring on my great co-host, the Creature Seeker.
Hey, Billy. How you doing?
Doing fine. How about you?
Yep. Pretty good. I have Bill Munns on the line here, and we just connected up. So I just want to introduce Bill.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on your show.
I think I remember meeting you, Bill, up in Washington, and it was great.
Let's see, the Washington event in Yakima. Was that the Gimlin thing?
You got it. Yep.
Right.
You got it. So we're so glad that you were able to be on the show with us tonight.
Sure, it's my pleasure. It should be interesting.
I don't think he knows the half of it, Billy.
Yeah.
Oh man. Just don't let Bruce get to you, Bill. Sometimes he can get a little obnoxious, if you know what I mean.
Oh no, there's no such thing as obnoxious in the world of business. Truthfully, there isn't,
But no, I was going to tell you, Bruce, when you come on tonight, I got some really interesting news over the weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. I was talking to this guy that goes by the name of Newman.
Yeah.
And he tells me that he's got some heck of some activities planned for Creature Weekend 2014.
Wow.
And he got me so excited I'm wearing my Creature Weekend shirt right now while we're doing this show.
Oh, Billy, you should have told me. I would have worn mine.
I'll tell you. I can't wait. I can't wait until Newman decides to make these announcements, because I heard there's some whoppers.
Yeah, there's going to be some great events planned, I believe. You're going to have to, after the show, you're going to have to let me in on it.
Okay. All right. Well, he would only give me limited information, so.
Yeah, you know how those millionaires are.
I know. So everybody just keep in the frame of your mind, May 2014, you want to attend the Creature Weekend event for 2014 in the month of May, you just got to do it. So keep it in the back of the mind.
Where would that be?
That would be in Cambridge, Ohio.
Cambridge, Ohio. Okay.
I checked the website. There's nothing up on the website. The website URL is www.creatureweekend.com. So that's the place to keep an eye on things. Also, there's a Facebook page, right, Billy?
Yep, that's facebook.com/Creature Weekend.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to that. But anyway, I think we need to get on to our show because we got such a great guest. I'm sure we got many things we can discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Billy, as you know, ever since the Yakima event, Bill Munns has been sort of at the foremost of my mind because of the work he's been doing, primarily on the Patterson-Gimlin film, which is probably, I would say one of the most scrutinized footages, allegedly Bigfoot footages, probably ever. So,
right.
And it's just I couldn't do it any justice. So I'm like, we gotta get Bill Munns on the show because he can tell you, specifically the work he's done, and it's a lot of it's technical, a lot of it's like math, and so I was like, I couldn't because I came back from Yakima, people were like, oh, what is that? And I couldn't even repeat it, So I'm really, really glad to have Bill Munns on the show tonight, just so that I'm not left with the task of trying to repeat it because I couldn't even do it justice.
Right. Well, first of all, Bill, we do have I've already had some folks in the chat room, one person at least that has told me they have never heard you discuss the Patterson-Gimlin film. So right at the start, I'm going to ask you, what actually brought you in to study the PG film?
Okay, good question. Pretty much all my life I've been fascinated by cryptozoology as a general subject. Okay, didn't know if any of the things were real or not, but I felt that the descriptions, stories, sightings certainly warranted a willingness to explore the idea. So for pretty much most of my life, I wasn't committed to any belief that, this must be real or this must be real or anything. I was simply curious that I think this is worthy of more explanation because it's possible. Rare, unusual maybe, but possible. And most of my career is generally known. I worked in Hollywood, did a lot of makeup, special effects, did a lot of creature costumes, ape suits, all that kind of stuff. And so I had the perspective of a person who has built ape suits and costumes, trying to make them look real and the challenges involved. And I got started in makeup in 1967, so I knew what kind of technology was available in the late 60s as compared to the 70s, the 80s, 90s, and so on. And in the back of my mind, I'd keep looking at the Patterson film. Every now and then I'd just see pictures of it or whatever, or the documentary would show it, and I'd watch it, go walking away from camera, look back, walk away again. And the one thing at first that kind of just stuck in my mind was looking at the back of the neck. Now, with a costume, that's where the head mask joins the torso. Mm-hmm. For us who make costumes, that is the biggest pain in the ass to try and make that look smooth that you could ever imagine. And it never looks smooth after you turn the head, like literally, to look over one shoulder and then turn back and you can see the back of the neck. If it's a costume, it'll always look totally crappy after that turn. Or the head and mask are locked down to each other, and then you get these weird buckles of the fabric in the back of the neck, which are very obvious. And the film had neither one of those. That was the thing that stuck out in my mind year after year and just kept me thinking, I just don't think that's a costume because it's just not behaving like costumes were back then. Now, they solved the problem of the neck in the 80s with new stretch spandex-type fur materials. But back in the 60s, what we see in the film just couldn't be done with a costume, period. So that's actually what sort of drew me particularly to the Patterson film. Then in 2008, I actually just was thinking that I might want to just offer my opinion as a makeup artist, and I honestly thought I'd talk to some people who were, like, interested in the film. I'd talk to them for an hour or two. If they wanted to do an interview, transcribe it, fine, and then I'd just walk away from it and go back to my life. But as soon as I started checking into it and realized the intense depth in which it's being studied and actually begin to appreciate the photographic material that was available, that was the first time I really was aware of how much photographic evidence there is. That's when I really started looking into it meticulously. And the more I looked into it, the more I could see that the analysis being done weren't being done right. Mm-hmm. The people were trying to do it right in good faith, but they weren't doing it right because they didn't have the necessary background. They didn't understand the creature business and costumes, prosthetics, and so on. They didn't understand general filmmaking, and they didn't even understand what is the best evidence among all the various copies of the film and such. So I was seeing all these people trying in good faith to solve the problem, and nobody was, because they didn't know what was the right evidence, and they didn't know about suits, costumes, and filmmaking. So as I got more and more into it, obviously I focused all my energy on that. And over the last 6 years, I've probably become one of the foremost people in the world in terms of knowledge of the subject, and definitely I have the largest image evidence database related to the film of anybody in the world by far. So I've got the material to work with. So that's kind of how it happened, but it literally was never planned. It wasn't intended. And if you would have asked me 6 years ago if I was going to be in this position today, I would have said no way. You know, I never would have seen how it progressed.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's nice to have someone like you that's been in this industry for a while, because, you know, if I'm not mistaken, you had a lot to do with some of the costume makery of the Planet of the Apes. Is that correct?
Nope, no connection
at all.
I thought
you didn't have any of that.
No, I was in school learning makeup in college when they filmed the first Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
I knew some people who worked on it, and as soon as it was released, all of us who were learning makeups had to do at least one Planet of the Apes makeup just to try it. So every young makeup artist trying to get into the business was doing it. But I myself was never actually connected to any of the films or the TV series itself. I studied them intensely, but be honest with you, 2 months after Planet of the Apes came out, 2001 Space Odyssey came out. The apes in the Dawn of Man sequence of 2001 are so incredibly superior to anything in Planet of the Apes that there's no comparison. So as a makeup artist, I looked at Planet of the Apes and I saw this is the past in terms of makeup artistry. It's the same techniques they used in The Wizard of Oz 30 years before, basically. Right. I looked at what Stuart Freeborn did in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I said, this is the future, because he had a mask with a soft skin and a hard substructure and skull and teeth, and he had animation of the soft lip tissue. And I looked at it and I said, that's the future, so that's what I want to pay attention to. And that turned out to be exactly what the entire industry gravitated toward. Now that is the industry standard. The Planet of the Apes technique of doing it is literally belongs in a museum with other fossils. But no, I myself personally, I did not do any actual work on the Planet of the Apes series movies.
Now, what are some of the movies that you were involved with on costume?
Some of the ones that I am most well known for, one of them is the original Swamp Thing, the first one.
Yep.
The first Beastmaster of the series, I think they did 3 of those.
Okay.
I am apparently very, very famous for being fired from Return of the Living Dead, the first one. I think there's been 7 or 8 more of them. But oddly enough, that silly little movie, which I thought was going to disappear into obscurity, in a nanosecond after it was released, has somehow endured as a cult classic.
Yep.
And, every makeup artist in the business has been fired from something or other. I mean, including Rick Baker. He was fired off of Night Skies by Steven Spielberg, which later became the movie E.T. So all of us, even guys with Academy Awards, everybody's been fired from something, but most of the people in the business, when they've been fired off of a movie, the movie is a zero movie nobody knows about.
Right.
So their resume is all their successes. I happen to have the amazing dumb luck that the one movie I get fired off of in a 40-year career is the one that becomes the cult classic that everybody keeps on wanting to know more and more about. So it's kind of a bizarre sort of legacy of that crazy little movie that, doesn't seem to want to die like the zombies in it. Anyways, I did the first one of those, or at least most of it, and then was removed from the movie. And those are the ones, in terms of creature stuff, that I tend to be more famous for. A lot of the other movies that I worked on, I contributed parts to it that weren't necessarily well known, but they were certainly interesting things. Then did a lot of commercial work, some TV work, like developed the pilot series and for the revival of the Munsters TV series in 1987 with John Shook and Lee Merriweather. Mm-hmm. That was the revival of the old one with Fred Gwynne and Yvonne DiCarlo.
Yep.
I set that up, did the pilot, and started the show and did all the prosthetic setup for that. And so I did that, but then I kind of gravitated into theme park work, museum exhibit design work, wildlife art. I expanded in the field instead of just doing the makeup work alone. So that kind of diffused my notoriety in the makeup field, but it was other work that was very, very exciting and excellent work that I'm very, very proud of.
Yep. Well, you certainly got a nice background, that's for sure. Now, Bruce, you had a question for Bill?
Well, no, he basically answered it. I was just going to say, for the uninitiated, I was going to ask for Bill just to talk about sort of his background in the makeup industry, and he did. So he either read my mind or
Yeah, it's definitely a nice resume, that's for sure. Now, we had... go ahead.
Oh, no, and I was just saying, if you take it as a whole, some people focus only on the movie stuff, which, by comparison to a lot of the guys who are still around today, it isn't terribly impressive. I never got up to doing the big studio movies, but if you look at things like my Gigantopithecus model, which was done as a museum exhibit design model, and a lot of the wildlife art and a lot of the theme park stuff like that, you see a body of work that equals or rivals pretty much anybody who's still in the movie business alone in terms of quality of the work. But some people see the connection, some people don't. So there's kind of an interesting dichotomy where some people consider me highly qualified and other people say, well, he hasn't done any really great movies, so he ain't that good,
Right.
So people see it both ways. Depends on how broad your vision is.
Right. Now, I was earlier, before I started the show, I had a gentleman that sent me in a fairly technical question about the PG film. But before I ask you the technical question, just to kind of lead up to it, kind of tell everybody what you did. My understanding is you got yourself a hold of one of was it the first or second generation of the film?
Well, actually, I've gotten hold of 20 copies
Oh,
over
wow.
the last 6 years and built up a database of them. Some are first gen, second gen, third gen, and such like that. Well, what you also need to understand is that they're different copy families. Now, when Roger first took the film, he took it down to Kodak, and he had a couple of first gen copies made, but they were what we call one-to-one contact prints, which means frame for frame they're identical in content, and they're identical in their frame size. Now, even a first generation of that process is actually not a good film to analyze Patty, because the grain pattern on the copy side is randomized different than the grain on the original side, and you immediately lose a fair amount of detail.
Okay.
John Green and Rene DeHinden then got the original, and they took it to a lab, and they did copies on an optical printer where they zoomed in on the original and expanded the figure of Patty onto the copies. Those copies are actually superior for analyzing Patty because there's less grain loss. Then later on, Roger made a deal with the American National Enterprises film company, A&E, and they got the original from him, and they did the same thing, but they went one step better. They not only did an optical print, and they did really beautiful 4X zoom-ins, which means the Patty is 4 times larger on their copy than she is on a contact print, which means there's like 0 grain loss on that master. But they also did what's called a liquid gate printing. Now, liquid gate printing, the source film's actually immersed in a liquid like water or a photo flow solution or such, and it fills in all the scratches and all the damage to the cell side. And Roger projected the original a lot, and there's a fair amount of damage to it by that time. The liquid gate process eliminates almost all those scratches. So what A&E did in 71 are actually among the very best copies around. And even if they're like second generation or third generation, once Patty's blown up in that first printing, her quality level holds after generations much better than those contact prints that Roger did. So, yes, I have scans from a first-generation contact print that Roger did, but they're no good for studying Patty, even at first generation, because of this printing process. So they're actually useful for splice analysis. They're useful for trying to get a photogrammetry solution of the site structure, the relationship of all of the objects, for mapping Roger's movement as a cameraman through the scene. They're useful for all of those, but they're worthless for studying Patty. And a lot of people don't seem to understand which copy is right for which type of analysis. So if you want to study Patty, you forget those first generations that Roger did because she's not looking good in any of those. You go to the 4X zoom-in, optically printed liquid gate process copies that A&E did for their Bigfoot Manor Beast documentary they released in 71. And I have 2 16-millimeter versions of their footage that I have, copy 8 and copy 14, in my inventory. So those are actually the best ones for studying Patty. So a lot of people get confused about that. And, you know, there's just an endless amount of misunderstanding about what is a good copy and what is not, because you first have to ask the question, okay, what are you specifically studying about the film? Then you find the right copy that's the best for analysis of that intention.
Right.
So it's a little technical and confusing, and nobody ever sorted this out before, which is, another reason why nobody came up with a solution before.
Right. Now, one thing that I found interesting about your presentation up in Yakima was how you had the discussion about we knew what kind of camera that Bob had, but
Roger,
there was Roger. But what about the lens? You learned something about the lens that he was using, which helped you determine what the size of Patty really was. Well,
back in Yakima, the work that I was doing on that, I had a limited amount of data because I had just literally, I had only scanned my first copy from John Green's archives a couple of months before. I was in May of 2009. I had gone up to see John Green around end of January 2009. That's when I scanned my first copy, one of Green's copies. So I didn't have the database of information at the time. So at the time, it seemed like a 15-millimeter lens as an alternative was a viable solution, and I tested that. But I didn't fully understand all the variables that were at play, and I didn't have all the other copies to reference. It was only afterwards, unfortunately, that I got more data which excluded the 15-millimeter lens, which is the one that calculated Patty at between 7'2" and 7'6". But being able to study Green's filming of Jim McLaren and comparing it to that, when I finally was able to get a complete set of scans from John's original, that basically eliminated the 15-millimeter lens as an option, unfortunately. So I had started this idea and sort of prematurely announced what I considered to be a conclusion, and then basically had to acknowledge publicly that this is not correct, and I have to go right back to the drawing board, put all the options of lens back on the table, and I have to work the problem more thoroughly. So the 15-millimeter lens, which unfortunately got a lot of publicity, and once it goes out on the Internet, it never dies.
Right.
That is not a viable option for the current analysis. The lens is either a 20-millimeter or a 25-millimeter. And that's something that I'm still working through, because I'm sure you can appreciate if you come up with an analysis and a conclusion rather hastily, and it turns out to be wrong, and you admit it and you go back to correct it. When you go back to correct it, you're going to be about 10 times more careful so you don't goof it up again. And
right.
So the corrected work on the lens is taking a lot more time. And I'll be honest with you, there are some squirrely little elements in the total analysis that I haven't been able to resolve yet, but somewhere in all of the data there's an error. If you look at some of the data, it says it's a 25 conclusively. If you look at other parts of the data, it says it's 20 millimeter conclusively, but it can't conclusively be both. So in the total body of data that I have, there's an error of some kind, and so I'm just slowly, methodically going through everything that's related to it to try to find the error so I can finally resolve that thing once and for all. But I'll be very honest with you, it's far more complex than I understood 5 years ago back in 2009, or 4 years ago back in 2009.
Right. Well, then you may not be able to answer this technical question that was sent in. So
okay, well, we'll try it anyways.
I'll ask it anyway.
Sure.
Alan Gaines had sent me a question, and this is what he said. He said he has heard John Green say that based on ratio of forearm to upper arm length of Patty in the PGF, it could not be a Bob Hieronymus in a suit. He says, have you been able to measure this ratio in your investigations?
Okay. That's something called the inframembrane index. It's either intramembral or inframembral. I get the two confused. Anyways, it's a ratio of upper arm to lower arm, or ratio of the both arm bones to the leg bones. Those things John Green has studied a great deal, and he used that as his conclusion that definitely it wasn't Hieronymus and didn't think it was any other kind of a human. That work I stayed away from for the longest time, didn't have any opinion whatsoever, because I wasn't confident of the methodology of determining where the bones are. Mm-hmm. Now, oddly enough, I am shortly going to be undertaking a new research project that is going to tackle that exact question. Now, I haven't done the research yet, so I can't give you what the conclusion is. But what we needed to do, the problem is, when you are talking about any analysis, the analysis needs a developed methodology of how you accomplish it. In other words, if you look at Patty, okay, how do you find the shoulder socket where the humerus plugs into the scapula and the clavicle? Okay, where do you find that? How do you find that spot? Or how do you find the hip socket in the pelvis? People looked at the picture and they just kind of picked a point and said, I think it's here. Right. Problem is that's not a scientific methodology. No. Somebody else could pick a different point and say, I think it's here. Okay. And some other people could look at it and say, it can't be found. So what you need is first to establish a methodology. Then once you have the methodology, then you can apply it to Patty. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be photographing human subjects, and then I am going to find their skeletons in the photograph based upon photographing them in different poses, like the arm hanging down, the arm forward, the upper arm at a 45-degree angle, and the elbow bent so that the forearm is parallel to the ground, or the arm angled backwards or so on, or the leg straight down to the ground, or the leg with the thigh up at a 45-degree angle, and then the lower leg straight down to the ground, foot, flat. I'm going to be photographing people in these different basic postures, front, side, and back. Then I'm going to find their skeletons just from looking at the photographs of them, comparing these various pictures. Then I'm going to have a registered nurse actually poking and probing, palpitating, whatever you want to call it, these people, and we're actually going to draw on them where the various bones actually are, like the iliac crest of the pelvis and where the clavicle is and the scapula and so on like that, and exactly where the elbow bends and where the knee bends and where the patella is and everything else like that, where the breastbone is, the sternum. We're going to actually draw these right on the person, and I'm going to first find the skeleton looking only at the photographs. And then I'm going to go back to the same photographs of the person where the skeleton is literally drawn on them from actually finding the bones, and see how accurate this method is of looking at a picture of a subject and finding where the bones are, and actually establishing a method of doing that. Then I have to also establish a method of subtracting fur, because Patty's fur covered and the human subjects I'm going to photograph aren't. Well, the method will be to take a shape like a part of the body and duplicate it about 5 or 6 times, and then put fur on each one of them, but the fur will have different lengths, like a ½ inch, inch and a half, 2 inches, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, etc., and see how much anatomical detail of those contours is still noticeable depending on the length of the fur. Now, as a generality, I can already tell you, the longer the fur, the more it will obscure all anatomical detail. But if you look at certain photos of Patty, there are rolls and bulges, and the shape of the calf is quite noticeable in a couple of photos and such like that. How long a fur will still show that shape, or does the fur get so long that it obscures any view of the shape? That will tell us, basically, as a methodology, how thick the fur is, and then when we look at Patty, we subtract the fur to get to the skin.
Right.
Then I've taken photographs and developed a methodology of showing how you can look at a person in photographs and find the bones. Then we take that methodology and we apply it to Patty after we've subtracted her fur, and that'll allow us to find her skeleton. So that's part of what I'm going to be actually doing in the coming months, and it will finally settle the issue of how long is the upper arm bone, the lower arm bone, how long is the spine, where's the pelvis, how long is the femur, how long is the tibia, and so on and so forth. And we're literally going to finally develop a methodology of doing it right. Now, John Green put a lot of effort into his work, but unfortunately he didn't develop the scientific methodology as the foundation. And that's why, even though all of his life he has argued for the arm ratio as being something, he hasn't been able to prove it to the satisfaction of other people, simply because there wasn't that preparation of the analysis methodology. So hopefully that answers the question.
It sounds very, very complicating.
Well, you think of it this way, okay? You want to test something, okay? Sometimes, if there's no existing test equipment, first thing you have to do is design the test equipment.
Right.
Okay? Let's just say, for example, you wanted to study infrasound, ultra-low frequency, below the human hearing level. And you go looking around for a microphone that records infrasound, and you find out that there just don't seem to be any microphones that go down below maybe 20 hertz or 10 hertz. And so you might actually have to invent your own microphone that records at the infrasound level.
Right.
There's probably some people that have got them. The Navy's probably got them for their sonar for finding other ships underwater and submarines, but they're not likely to give it to you because it's probably classified. But anyways, if you wanted to do that, you might sometimes have to invent the tools before you can do the research.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So there are times when you actually have to invent the analysis methodology first, and then you can actually apply it to doing the analysis. If you're lucky, you can find the methodology already existing, but if not, you occasionally do have to invent it.
Right.
So in this case, since nobody normally looks at a historical photo of something and tries to figure out where its skeleton is, there isn't an established methodology. So first I have to invent the tool, and then I have to use the tool to get to the result.
That's a lot of work, Bill.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
Somebody said earlier it's like watching ice melt.
Not quite as exciting, actually. But it's worth it, though. Patty the film is without a doubt the greatest mystery of the 20th century, bar none. Yeah. It is an extraordinary event, and it's absolutely legitimate. It is not a hoax. That's beyond any shadow of a doubt in my mind. And so it is a remarkable mystery that justifies this much effort. So I don't feel my time is wasted. I don't feel I'm chasing a dead end or chasing a rainbow or the pot of gold into the rainbow or anything else like that. I know it's a real mystery that deserves this kind of serious attention. So I know that I'm making the contribution toward understanding the mystery. So I know I'm accomplishing something that for the rest of my life I will be proud of.
Right.
Well, Bill, we all appreciate your work, and I must say that, and Billy will tell you that, I'm kind of the skeptic of the group, but, the Patterson-Gimlin film is sort of the one piece of evidence that sort of keeps me investigating and researching, because it is just so compelling in my mind, and of course, I haven't done nearly the work that you have on it, but it just is an astounding piece of evidence, and I think that, this withstood the test of time, really.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. There's no question. If you look at all of everything right now that we have that is anyway associated with the phenomenon of Bigfoot, it is the single most powerful, compelling piece of evidence in terms of not only just the visceral reaction of watching it, but in terms of quality of evidence. It is by far and away way above any other piece of evidence in terms of the quality of it and the capacity for what it can reveal. I mean, I'm even constantly amazed discovering incredibly subtle things that can be gleaned from the film once you understand how to analyze it and once you have all of the appropriate high-resolution copies and from the variety of films and everything. Some of the things, even though they don't necessarily hinge on whether Patty's real or not, the things that you can analyze are sometimes just astonishing. Let me just give you one simple example. A lot of people, of course, say it's a hoax, and Roger filmed it as a hoax, and all of that stuff. And if you know anything about filmmaking back in the 60s, nobody would just take a single quarter of the end of a roll of film and put a guy in an ape suit and just say, okay, just start walking that way and go for it, and I'm going to start chasing you, and I'm going to shoot it once, and I don't know what I have on film, but we're going to pack it in and go home. Nobody would do a hoax like that. They'd film one segment, they'd stop, they'd talk about it, they'd break the guy out of the suit, let him cool off a bit, or get his head mask off, let him cool off again, then they'd set up the next shot, then they'd do it, then they'd set up the next shot. They would do it over a period of time. Maybe it's a half hour, 45 minutes, something like that. But they would not, say, okay, we're going to do it in one take, 2 minutes maximum, We're just going to go for it, then we're going to pack it up, go home, and we're going to cross our fingers and hope it looks good. Because you got to remember, the video generation today doesn't understand with an old-fashioned movie camera, after you film it, you can't play it back. You don't know what you have on film.
Right.
So you would never do one take. You would never just do it all spontaneously and cross your fingers, say, I hope we got it. Okay? So if it was a hoax, it wouldn't have been done in one continuous thing. Now, how do you know if that filming is one continuous thing that occurred in a matter of 2 minutes, or whether it was done in different segments that may have taken 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes? Well, believe it or not, you can look at some of the shadows on some of the trees. And they're in the earliest segments, and then they're in the middle segments. Or you can look at trees in the middle segment and in the end segment, because there's 6 segments to it where the camera started and stopped during Roger's activity. If you look at the shadows on the trees, they do not change at all. Now, if you look at John Green's filming of Jim McLaren, most people don't realize Jim McLaren did the walk twice. There was a second guy there with a second camera that day and filmed McLaren's second walk. And I only found out about this maybe 6-8 months ago when I actually got some film, and it had McLaren's second walk. Nobody knew he'd even done it. He'd forgotten about it. Green didn't remember it. Nobody had ever reported it anywhere, but there was a second walk. Okay. Now I'm comparing, I've scanned both of them, so I'm comparing his first walk and his second walk, and there's a time lapse of maybe 15, 20 minutes between them. And I can find shadows all over the place that have changed in 15 or 20 minutes. Okay, so I know what to look for in shadows that have moved in just 15 minutes. Now, there's another reel of film nobody even knew existed until somebody sent it to me and said, I don't know what this is, but Renee DeHinden gave it to me and it might be useful. Have a look at it. And I start scanning the film, and it's Renee DeHinden himself at Bluff Creek in 72, standing in front of the camera holding this 8-foot white measure bar. Everybody's seen the picture of the boy, Hodgkins' boy, I think Mike Hodgkins or somebody, who's standing in the Bluff Creek holding this 8-foot tall stick. That picture everybody knows about. Nobody knows that DeHinden did the same thing. And he's on camera at Bluff Creek holding this stick, but he holds it in about 8 different positions. So he stands in one position, they shoot off about 10 feet of film, stop the camera, he moves to the next position, tells them, okay, start the camera, they start it again, moves, stops the camera, moves again. So his moving across these 10 positions with a few minutes in between, there's a time lapse of about 20 minutes maybe. I can look at the first ones, I can look at the end ones, and I can see all the shadows changing. And I know the shadows change that much in 15, 20 minutes. Now I go back to the Patterson film, and I look at some of these subtle shadows on the trees from the beginning to the middle sequence or middle to end sequence. They don't change a bit, which means the entire film truly was shot in less than 2 minutes.
In one take.
Shot through. But you never would have known that you could verify that without these other footages, and nobody had ever figured out a way that they could verify if this was true or not. So, there's a lot of incredible things like that that are being gleaned from analysis of the film over time, and I'm constantly discovering new things that give me a greater clarity of understanding of exactly what's going on.
Also, Bill, I think that if one were planning to hoax someone with film footage, they wouldn't use the very best film in terms of the clarity and fidelity of the images that Patterson used. Am I correct in that?
Well, there's several ways of thinking about that. Considering how far away Patty is from camera, even with Kodachrome as the best film, you're not going to see a lot of detail. But I have heard a lot of people who are skeptical offer that up as an argument where they say, Roger purposely didn't want to show her as clearly as possible or something, because then the flaws in the suit would show up or something like that. In hoaxing it, you wouldn't normally think along those lines. It's possible a hoaxer could go in and say, oh, yeah, I'm deliberately going to use a grainy film instead of Kodachrome 2, which is real fine grain, so that it won't be as clear. But you would probably have shot some test footage of the suit first on Kodachrome and had it processed and looked at it and said, gee, that's too sharp. The flaws are all showing, so I better switch to a high-speed Ektachrome and maybe push it to stop in a lab so it's just grainy as all hell. You wouldn't necessarily do that without actually testing it, and there's certainly no record of him testing anything at all. But I've heard that argument, but I wouldn't use that, the fact that Roger used Kodachrome, which is one of the finest films of the time in terms of image quality. I wouldn't use that myself personally as an argument for authenticity. It could have been something just as simple as that's the only film that Roger had, and he didn't have a dime and couldn't go out and buy more, and he had 2 rolls of Kodachrome, and he took those along. Because he went there, he wasn't expecting to film Patty. He was expecting, he was hoping to maybe find some footprints, because Green and DeHinden had found them 2 months before at Blue Creek Mountain nearby. So he was just looking for anything, and he probably figured that anything, okay, shoot it on Kodachrome. But Roger used a lot of Ektachrome also in his documentary film work. I've verified that. So he was familiar with both film stocks, and it could have really been something as simple as when they were putting together the expedition and didn't have any money, he just grabbed whatever film he had, and he just happened to have 2 rolls of Kodachrome. So it really could be that simple. I wouldn't personally read into it more about that in terms of, his choosing the finest quality, or he wouldn't have chosen that quality if he was hoaxing. He would have chosen a poorer quality of film. You can argue it, but I don't think we can ever conclusively get into Roger's head and figure out why he had that film stock in the camera. So I don't think the evidence will lend us to a conclusion toward that line of thinking, so I don't go there.
Yeah. What would you say that your biggest critics, what's the biggest criticism of your work, Bill?
Oh, God, I could write an encyclopedia about the decisions.
I see a book in the works.
Yeah, I know. 1001 Things that Bill did wrong. That's the working title. I would be very, very hard-pressed to decide which one is the most idiotic and which one is the most legitimate, because so many of them are utterly idiotic, and so many of the things that the people who don't like me say about me don't have an ounce of truth to them. But I think the biggest problem, this is a generalization, but I think the biggest problem with people who criticize my work is that they don't understand the process. Mm-hmm. So they don't think the type of analysis I'm doing, they don't think it can be done. So they think I'm just lying, stretching, bullshitting, whatever. I'm making it up, I'm fudging the data, whatever like that, because they don't think anybody can do the analysis because they don't understand the process.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of criticism on the skeptical side because they don't understand what's going on, and they think, well, if I don't understand it, nobody can do it. If nobody can do it, then Bill's got to be making this up. So I see a lot of stuff that sort of is that general mindset. But the bottom line is simple. Their ignorance is not my problem, and their ignorance isn't going to stop me from finding out what the truth of the film is. It's attainable. If you look at, let's look at the whole legal system and crime investigation and such like that. Let's go back 40 years. If they found blood in the scene, they could say, well, okay, the victim's blood is type O. and here we have some type AB negative. That's not the victim's blood. Aha, it's the killer's blood. Mm-hmm. And they find somebody who they really like for the crime, and wonderful, the guy's got AB negative blood. That could send him to prison. Today, you give them a blood sample, they'll nail it down to the person. They'll say, no, sorry, it's not the same person. Not even in the person's family, you know. The analysis technology has changed so drastically. Well, a lot of people have their heads stuck in the past in terms of film analysis technology. They don't understand what can actually be accomplished. So they think it can't be accomplished, and so they think, I can't be doing it right because it can't be done, so I've got to be doing it wrong or making it up. But if you understand the technology, then it's amazing what the film can tell you. It's absolutely phenomenal.
While we're on the subject of DNA, what do you think about Bill Sykes' notion that the Yeti could be like a large polar bear?
Well, I know next to nothing about DNA. I mean, I know what the initials stand for, deoxyribonucleic acid, but that's the total extent of my knowledge right there. And then there's this double helix, you know, which I've seen pictures of. So I would be the last person in the world to offer any kind of a criticism on what Sykes has done or what his new revelation is. It appears that, as much as I know, he has found evidence of a new species of bear, which I think is fabulous. Whether or not that is the Yeti, it isn't really conclusive, because there still could be a Yeti and a new species of bear. Entirely possible.
Yep.
It certainly does not answer the questions about what's happening in North America, because there's no way you're going to tell me that Patty's a bear. I won't buy that for 1 second. The footprints that we're finding and the trackways all over the place, I'm sorry, but there's no way in the world that's a bear. So it's an intriguing revelation, and I think it's excellent that a legitimate scientist looked at suspicious evidence that a bunch of people just said, here, I found this strange thing. What is it? He looked at it, and he found a new species. I think that is an incredibly powerful, positive development for biologists and DNA geneticists and DNA analysts to possibly consider that if somebody else has a sample and says, could you look at this and tell me what it is, they might be more willing to, because if they find any kind of a new species, that's a powerful plus for them, PR-wise, career-wise, grant-wise, you know, everything else like that. And so for one geneticist to do that, find a new species, the people who say, well, there's no new species to discover, that blows that out of the water completely. Or all the new species are like little things. There's no big things. Well, a bear's a pretty big thing. So I think in that sense it's a remarkably positive development. How it's all going to fall out in the long run, affecting the concept of the Yeti, I don't really know, because basically it doesn't exclude the idea that there still is a Yeti, which is a large primate. What it does do is prove that there is a new species out there of a very big mammal that nobody knew existed, and that's a very, very powerful plus to the motivation of exploring further. So I kind of look at it that way, and I think that his work is incredibly positive in that sense. I think it will really motivate a lot more willingness to explore.
Right. Definitely was an interesting program, I do have to say. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, Bill, question for you.
Okay.
For someone who's studied the PG film so extensively, in your opinion, do you think we need a body in order to prove once and for all that this creature is real flesh and blood animal, or do you think that their existence can be proved with just more footage?
Well, photographic evidence can actually prove a tremendous amount, yes. And I have no doubt in my mind Patty's real. Now, there's one little sort of a glitch to the proof that we have to acknowledge, and that is that the Patterson-Gimlin film, proves there's one of them. Okay? Now, we don't know biologically how to classify this one yet. And unfortunately, there is this remarkably remote possibility that's probably about 1 billion to 1, that what we're looking at is actually a very husky human female who has a medical condition called hypertrichosis. She has a deformed skull, and she likes to run around in the woods naked. Okay, now that's about a 1 in a billion chance, but we can't discount that based on the film. All we can say for sure in the film is there's one of them, but we can't say that there's a species and species population based on that film.
Bill, don't get Bruce too excited talking about hairy, naked women in the woods.
Okay. Anyways, that's the problem of the Patterson film trying to prove a species, is that there's only one in the film. If there's any photographic data that shows several, like some of the thermal stuff that shows 2 or 3 figures, Bart Cutino's got some fascinating stuff. Anything that shows multiple figures then shows a species. But the Patterson film, being only one figure, it would be a stretch for us to say this is a species as opposed to this is a individual. And I think one of the problems where a lot of people who do research along this line sort of get into trouble with mainstream science is they try to take their data and reach beyond what the data will actually tell them. It's actually not uncommon in science. There are paleontologists who do it all the time, where they look at some bones and then they invent some of these incredible stories about the creature, and the evidence doesn't actually support it, but they all do it, and they all kind of look the other way when the other one does it, because it makes it more possible for them to get their grant funding for their next expedition and such if they can tell a more elaborate story about this new fossil they found. So they stretch the truth in terms of what the data will support. I've seen it many, many times. But I think in the Bigfoot world, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, do the same thing. They look at the evidence they have, and the evidence will take them to a certain position scientifically. But they reach a little further with what they say the evidence supports when it doesn't, and they weaken their position in the eyes of science when they do that. So I think that's something where we have to kind of limit ourselves, and that's why when I talk about the Patterson film, I can only say honestly it shows an individual. It doesn't prove a species. So I'm limiting what the conclusion supports based upon what the film is. There's one in the film. So there is proof of one, yes. But there isn't proof in the film of a species.
But could we not extrapolate from and I'm doing exactly what you say people are guilty of doing, but could we not extrapolate from the film that even though we see one, that there must have been at least a breeding population to produce one now in this day and age where these stories have come down from Native American tradition, for centuries? Can we not assume that there must have been at some point, and this could be the last one, who knows,
yeah.
But...
Well, okay, you have to separate the absolute of conclusion from the probability. Okay, they're two different things. See, absolute evidence conclusion would not support the argument of a species. But if you weigh the two arguments, it's a one-of-a-kind mutation, a freak of nature, or it is one of a species, all probability would side with it's one of a species. So you can go that way in terms of probability. If you take your two options and look at the probability of the two, in all likelihood, if somebody goes out in the woods and photographs a thing, doesn't matter if it's a primate, another kind of a mammal, a lizard, a bird, anything else like that, all probability, and it's totally distinctive and unlike anything else before, all probability would rest with it is probably a new species as opposed to it is probably a one-of-a-kind mutation. So you can go there on the basis of probability, but you can't go there in an absolute or sort of strict scientific sense.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Now I want to switch gears here just a little bit. Bill, are you aware of the Erickson footages that have come out?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You know
Adrian hired me 3 years ago to image stabilize it.
Okay. So you know about the Matilda, what they're quoting as Matilda. You know about the one that appears to be sleeping on the ground that rises and falls.
Yeah, the sleeping one, yeah.
The sleeping one. And then the other one that a lot of people are calling a Chewbacca mask.
Yeah, I'm the one who revealed that.
Okay. So then you have worked on other footages, and MK Squatch wanted to know if you've been working on that footage and what are your thoughts on it.
Well, like I say, Erickson hired me to image stabilize it and then re-render it in high-definition video for his documentary. After I image stabilized it, I had to give him the bad news because he bought the footage from somebody else. He didn't film it himself.
Right.
I had to give him the bad news that it's fake and it's just a person in a Chewbacca mask where they reworked the hair work so the hair work would match the costume that they made up of that, and the costume's the sleeping figure. Well, unfortunately, he didn't particularly like hearing that, and so he chose to continue to tell people that it's real.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, so you're the one that made the comparison photo of the Matilda next to the Chewbacca mask that's going around the internet?
And that was in my analysis that I gave him 3 years ago.
It was definitely a dead ringer.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be an expert to see it.
Yeah. I tried to explain to him. I mean, I told him about the Georgia body and how quickly people found the mask as soon as the photo was released. And that Tungami video, it took them about 24 hours for somebody to find the mask that's used for that. Yeah. And so I explained to him in the analysis, I said, look, you release this head, and I guarantee you, as soon as somebody gets it and does a screen capture of a still, within 12 hours at the most, somebody's going to nail it for a Chewbacca mask, probably even faster. And then if you suggest that it's real, or even have a question in your mind, like maybe it's real, maybe it's not, your integrity and the integrity of everybody connected with it is just going to be blown right out of the water.
Right.
That was my advice to him. I said, if you want to, because his other footage, I don't have an opinion on. The thermal stuff, I'm not an expert on. I didn't see everything that he had. But my advice to him was, if you want to show people how well you vet the evidence you accumulate as well as the evidence you acquire from other people, you have to show that you're willing to reject the crap and the fake stuff. And then something which has been vetted and it holds up to inspection, then you can confidently endorse it as real, and it will have a much more persuasive power with the general public if you show that you're willing to reject the garbage.
Right.
Unfortunately, he didn't take my advice.
Unfortunately, that's right. I could tell you, I listened to a really funny radio show back about I guess it's been about a week ago. It's actually what they call you can now do live radio broadcasts on YouTube apparently. And I was watching a researcher here in Virginia. I'm not going to name his name, but it was pretty hilarious. It had me laughing. But he was arguing with someone else, because someone else had said, listen, Matilda is a Chewbacca mask, plain and simple. And he goes, well, how do you know Chewbacca wasn't designed from someone seeing a Bigfoot? And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
All righty.
in a bizarre sort of way, I can sort of halfway see the logic to it.
Right.
I mean, the aliens, who are from another solar system, they've, scouted out Earth, and they saw what a trash can lid looks like when somebody throws it in the air like a Frisbee. And they deliberately designed their spaceships to look like that. So we
That's right.
that they are trash can lids thrown in the air like a Frisbee instead of knowing that Earth is being invaded. Yeah, I can see the logic of that.
Now, Bill, now and then people come on the show, and of course, we like to be tolerant of different opinions,
right?
In absence of evidence to the contrary. But there's a fair amount of people who believe that Bigfoot has the ability to travel interdimensionally.
Yep.
What is your feeling on that?
Well, okay. First of all, that's getting into a whole level of physics where I don't think we know anything, actually. We got parallel universes and all of that, and time warps and all that kind of stuff that are the fodder of most science fiction. But there's an amazing amount of science today, which was science fiction 50 or 100 years ago. So when you go into something like that, which most people would classify as a paranormal capability, I don't go there, to be honest with you. I know people talk about it, but I don't want to go anywhere near there myself personally. I know that there's a lot we don't understand about the universe, the time-space continuum, the whole thing like that. And the universe, in terms of physics, is probably infinitely more complex than we understand, and things that we insist are impossible are probably actually quite possible, like travel faster than the speed of light, things like that. But as soon as you drag anything that's Bigfoot related into anything which is generally classified as paranormal and outside the bounds of anything we know about real physics, I don't go there.
Well, I think people offer
that
as a reason why this why evidence, for the existence of this creature is so elusive.
Uh-huh.
But personally, I just hate to offer one mystery to solve another mystery.
Yeah, there's other explanations for, why we can't see them often. I mean, all you have to do is try to figure out why socks disappear in the dryer. That's a total mystery. That's now you see it, now you don't. Some people find it, some people don't. All you have to, I just moved from one house to another. I've been here now about 6-7 weeks, and anybody who's ever moved recently knows if you move from one house to another, you are guaranteed some things will disappear.
That's right.
They do.
That's right.
And
yep.
my wife and I are wandering around the house constantly looking for 15 or 20 things that have disappeared. We know they got here, but they've disappeared.
Right.
So if you're going to talk about Bigfoot being able to appear and disappear, there might be some more kind of grounded, down-to-earth parallels we could work with before we go to the paranormal in terms of explanation. Getting realistic about the question, no. The simple thing is that if you have a wildlife species, a feral species of mammal that is cognizant of humans and specifically wants to avoid them, I'm pretty confident that it could avoid them quite well.
Yeah.
And that sighting them or finding them could be a tremendous challenge if they just plain don't want to be found.
Right.
And I could imagine, if you've got some Bigfoot creatures out there and they're watching hunters out in the woods, and okay, there's a hunter on my left, and there's a deer on my right, and there's this incredibly loud bang, and that deer is now lying on the ground, looks kind of dead. I don't think I want to be around that guy who makes the bang, I could just, realistically, I could see that happening. Or even in the old days, in the Old West, they come across animals all their lives, and suddenly they come across animals where one leg is stuck in a metal trap, and they're saying, I've never seen an animal stuck in one of these things before, and it is obviously suffering, or maybe it's going to die soon. This is not good, and you go off and you watch it. Sure enough, along comes a human being, opens it up, takes the animal out, and they figure out, okay, that human being is connected to that thing that traps your foot and imprisons you, and maybe you die. I don't like these people. So you could actually have something as simple as that, where they have been observing humans and their activity in the wilderness and decided they don't want to step into one of their traps and they don't want to get shot by that thing that goes bang. So stay away from them. And that could be a part of their social structure. I mean, you look at the Galapagos Islands, and the animals there had no human contact. They're not afraid of humans, like the red-footed boobies and the marine iguanas and everything else, and a lot of the birds. You can literally just walk up to them. I mean, even the dodos that didn't have any human contact, you could just walk up to them, and they just stand there, and then you could beat them to death with a club. That's how they became extinct, actually. Because they had no interaction with people, they weren't afraid of them. You look at animals that have some sharing of the territory with humans, and a lot of them learn very quickly, I don't like these things, that are in the funny-shaped colors that sometimes change, and they have these things that look like branches that make loud noises. I don't like these either. And they could literally develop an instinctive, I don't want to be around these people, and if they don't want to be around them, you're not going to find them.
Yeah. I agree.
I think a similar phenomena existed when they explored the inner regions of Madagascar.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, they talked about these little mammals. They were able just to pick them up off the ground because they just weren't afraid of humans.
Yeah, they had no large predators. About the only thing that it might have been preyed on is probably birds. So if it was another mammal, they weren't afraid of them, even if they were bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, in the meantime, Bill's hoping he doesn't get any film footage of Bigfoot disappearing into a portal.
Actually, no, I'd be fascinated to see that.
Well, we were talking earlier about the Erickson footage, and Native Alien has had a question. He says, can you please ask Bill if there's any more Erickson footage that you have seen that we haven't seen yet?
The only ones, I saw a little of the thermal stuff, but the main ones that I saw were the sleeping one and the head close-up. The head close-up is 20 seconds long, and that's the one that I image stabilized and rendered out in HD. Aside from those and some of the thermal stuff of the things walking in some kind of a large field with real tall grass at night that Dennis Foale took, I haven't seen any other footage than that, but anything which is better than the Patterson film and phenomenally real, nope, haven't seen a bit of that.
Okay. And to quickly switch back to the PG film, Flycatch wanted me to ask you that when you looked at the film, were you able to see the debris falling from the pads of the feet while a creature was walking?
No, I haven't seen anything like that in it. It could be an image artifact. It could be grain noise, depending on the copy. And, of course, it's got 954 frames, so I have no idea which frame is being referenced. But if someone were to point to a specific frame or, send me a copy of it, what I would do is I would pull up the same frame on about 6 to 8 different copies, and I would study the various copies and see if whatever that is consistent among the copies. If it's not, then it's a copy artifact. If it's the same in all of them, then it would be worth studying. It's
right.
Like when that idiot massacre theory came up and somebody said, aha, this flare here, that's the muzzle flash of a gun. Somebody's shooting a gun while Patty's walking along that way. That is a one-frame little light flare on one of John Green's copies. It's not on any other copy, but it's on one of John Green's copies, and any copy made from that one has it. And when they did a TV conversion of that copy, the TV conversion blended frames that one with the flare and the one before it without for a blend to get up to 30 frames a second. So the blend produced the half flash, and then there's the full flash, which actually is a true frame, and then it's gone. And somebody was looking at that and saying, aha, that's proof that the gun was fired then. Well, it's not proof. It's just an image artifact, a light flare on one of John Green's copies in his inventory. And it's not on any of the other copies, so it's not on the original. Didn't happen that day. So something falling from the feet, I don't know. I've never seen it. But if I had a frame or a couple of frames that supposedly show it, I could run it through my database, check it against at least 6, maybe 8 copies, and see if it's at least consistent among the copies, which would mean it's on the original. Then it could be studied.
Okay.
It's possible, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But that would be the process of trying to determine that.
Yep, that makes sense. Hoof Prince 54 has a great question as well. He wants to ask if you could comment on the credibility of video, and can it be scrutinized like the Patty film?
Well, first of all, even high-def video is only half the resolution of 16-millimeter film. So right off the bat, you're dealing, even at high-def, you're dealing at a lower resolution. The problem with video is that manipulation of video footage with new software technology is easier to manipulate than old-fashioned film was, especially in 1967. There's almost no way you could have taken Roger's original film and tampered with it in any way that we couldn't nail down as tampered immediately.
Right.
But with video footage, the technology for altering it is much more sophisticated. And because in video, every individual pixel has a specific address, literally every point of light or color has a specific position and a certain measured value of color. To superimpose an alteration into a video can be done with a much higher level of precision that in turn then requires a much higher level of analysis even to try to unscramble. So it's a whole different ballgame with video, but the simple reality is video today is much easier to tamper with than old-fashioned film.
All right. All right. There's your answer.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, did you disappear?
No, I was just, I had a random thought, and I don't mean to, talk about a totally different subject, but, so Bill worked on the Swamp Thing with Adrian Barbeau.
Yep.
And I was wondering, did you work on any prosthetics with Adrian, or was that all stuff she brought with her?
She didn't have any prosthetics. She had her own makeup artist, so I met her once, talked to her for about 3 seconds, but I never did any makeup work on her. There were no prosthetics for her. As far as I know, the makeup artist who did work on her just did a straight makeup. The boobs are real. I didn't add anything there. But no, as far as I know, she has no prosthetics involved in that film. And so I just did the makeup effects work, Swamp Thing, the arcane monster, the guy who gets turned into like a little rat, stuff like that. And another makeup artist worked with Adrian and did her makeup all the way through.
Well, Bill, I was going to say that was, if you had done any of the prosthetics on Adrian Barbeau, I was going to say that was some of your best work.
Uh-huh. Yes, she is fairly well equipped. Yes.
It's getting late in the night, isn't it, Billy?
Yeah. Get your mind out of the gutter, Bruce. Well, Bill, this has been great. You got anything else, Bruce? I tell you, I feel like I'm flooded with information now.
I know. I don't even know where to begin because I can talk to Bill Munns for like hours. I feel like we should just like meet him for dinner and just like and just hear all this, all this experiences. I mean, it's just fascinating.
Well, if we started with dinner, we wouldn't finish by breakfast. Actually, it'd be a long night.
Well, that just means more prime rib for Bruce. He can eat probably 12. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's been a thrill having you on, Bill. I really appreciate it, and we hope that you would accept an invitation to come back maybe later on when you have some more information about the film, because I'm sure you're going to continue to learn more new things.
Yeah, with a new research project that's coming up, it's going to be some exciting stuff. And I know people have been debating Patty's anatomy for like 46 years, and there's all different ways that people have tried to prove this or prove that or such. I think we're going to really raise the bar quite high in terms of how to properly appraise her anatomy. And even some of the preliminary that I've been working on, there's going to be some very intriguing surprises about the particulars of her anatomy that I think will be quite fascinating.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bruce, do you have anything else for Bill?
I think that's pretty much it, Billy.
All right. Bill, we greatly appreciate you coming on the show and taking time out of your day to be with us. So thank you. And, of course, thank your wife for allowing your time with us.
Okay, will do. Pleasure being there, and I'm glad to do it again.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bill.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Bill.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, Bruce, we've wrapped up another one. So next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Guess what this show's going to be?
I know what that show's going to be.
Do you remember or not?
Hopefully. No, I do remember. Hopefully it'll be in an entertaining show where people will talk about their scariest experience in the field. I think that will be a very interesting show right before Halloween.
Yep, it's one of our Topic Tuesday shows. And Bruce came up with the great idea that since we're going to be so close to Halloween, it would be a good idea for people to call in and tell us about the most scariest thing that has ever happened to you in the woods or wherever, in relation to, of course, our topic. So should be an exciting show, and hopefully people will tune in and tell their stories because people love to hear it.
Yeah, we have a few of our own stories, don't we, Billy?
Oh yeah, we do. We have scary stories. We do have scary stories.
I think if you get out in the woods for long enough, you'll eventually have a story that you'll tell people about. They're like, I think you're lying. No, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, there's, like I say, I'm hoping that we have some folks call in and share some scary stories with us. But if not, I'm sure that you and I can come up with a few ourselves. So.
Yeah.
And it may not even be big. It might not even be Bigfoot related. We might go into another realm. Who knows? So,
hey guys, I'm still here, and I'm just curious. We're off the air, right?
No, we're still on the air.
We're actually still on the air. Yeah.
Oh.
So, Bruce, do you want to call Bill back after we end the show? Just
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I'll hang it up now.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. All righty, Bruce. So we will see everybody next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Everyone, again, I have to remind you again that Creature Weekend 2014, what were the dates, Bruce?
May 16th through the 18th.
All right, so go ahead and make your plans now at work or whatever. Get those days off. May 16th through the 18th, 2014, Cambridge, Ohio. Preacher Weekend 2014. You're not going to want to miss it. It's going to be a great one. So
it's going to be definitely. It gets better and better every year, and some of the events we have planned, especially in 2014, I think are going to be a lot of fun. And you'll be able to, for people who think they're really good researchers, we'll give them an opportunity.
That's right. So that's a little bit of a, what do you want to call that? That's a little nugget.
Yeah.
To give you an idea that you will be able to show just how good of a researcher you are. Show your abilities. So, be interesting. All right, well, we've wrapped it up for tonight. We thank everyone for tuning in. Thanks for everyone that showed up into the chat room. We actually had a pretty full chat room tonight. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, we had a lot of people.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people like to hear Bill and hear about the work he's doing on the PG film. It's definitely very educational. So, but we will see everyone next Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. Remember to join us again next Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. We appreciate every one of our listeners. Thank you so much for being here.
Can I give you $30 to lean into your decision to start working out and eating better? I'm Carl, co-founder of Body. That's BODI. And right now, if you sign up for a 1-year subscription to Body, I'll give you an instant $30 discount. That's 59% off. Look, I know it's not easy to get fit and lose weight, especially if you're trying to figure it out by yourself. But we make it simple. Just follow a program for 20 to 30 minutes day by day and lose 5 to 10 pounds a month. We have over 120 programs that have been tested and proven to work, and almost 300,000 5-star reviews in the App Store to prove it. Body also has complete eating plans and thousands of healthy, delicious recipes. So stop guessing and start seeing results with Body. And let me give you a $30 instant discount right now so you save big on the app that CNN_ named Best Fitness App. So don't wait. Sign up for a year of Body and get a $30 instant discount to save 59%. Just go to body.com. That's body with an I.com.